Now, we can't deal with Islamic art without dealing with tile work, usually Iranian or Persian tile work. The iwans, or these large entrances of the Isfahan Mosque, feature soaring, pointed arches, framing tile-sheathed Makwarna vaults. These are three-dimensional tile work, as in the dome at the Alhambra, or in a more massive scale here, where these aren't individual three-dimensional tiles. Obviously, they're massive, but the whole form is made in that general shape. The use of glazed tile actually has a very long history in the Middle East. It goes back to ancient Mesopotamia, and it will peak in the 16th and 17th centuries. Oftentimes, we'll see it used as a veneer over brick, just like the Romans would use marble and painted concrete to cover brick. In Islam, the tradition is going to be to use tile to do the same thing. And these are glazed tiles, often covering whole buildings, domes, and minarets. There's a couple of different forms. I want to talk to you about how they're made. So, the traditional form, we see large ceramic tiles that are fired and glazed before they're actually shaped. So in this case, they take a tile like this that has been fired and glazed, and this is a fairly low fire tile, and now they're going to etch in the design, or etch in the forms that they need, and break them apart, just like you would if you were making stained glass. And then you're going to take those individual pieces and create your form. And you'll notice how nicely these fit, how little space there is in between. In traditional Islamic tile work, you don't have a lot of grout showing in between. The skill of the craftsman is in the form and the fit of these individual tiles. Now, once those individual tiles, your pattern is laid out, traditionally it will actually be flipped over and inverted, and each of those tiles is cut at a bit of an angle. So you see they don't fit as well from the back, and that's intentional because from the back you're going to add a binder, a mortar or plaster that's going to hold all those tiles together, creating a larger panel of these individual tiles. It's going to look something like this. Now, there's a second form, which is Correda seca. These are tiles that are introduced in Muslim Spain, and these are polychrome, bearing complex geometric forms or scripts, but they're painted with the glaze on the tile, usually with a greased piece of string in between to act as a resist and allow those colors to stay in a very perfect position. It also gives it the dark line that you often see in between. Now, these, of course, are more economical since a single tile can now cover a large area. It's also faster because I'm not fitting individual tiles together. They will also create three-dimensional tiles. And these are much more difficult because you see the tiles shrinking and doing different things during the firing. So you have to be particularly good at understanding the shrink rate of the clay you're working with to create these tiles, much less to create matching tiles, all of similar size and shape. Now, the single-piece tiles do not tend to be as brilliant. They do not reflect color like the irregular mosaic tiles that we see. And one of the most famous forms of tile work we're going to see is actually the Mihrab from the Madrasa. And this is a very famous tile work in Isfahan. It's a synthesis of calligraphy and ornament. Now again, in Islam, calligraphy takes on an artistic form of its own. They use Arabic and sometimes even Kufic as a decorative form, just like we would use calligraphy as a decorative form in some projects. Oftentimes in the Western world, you see it used for preschoolers, putting the alphabet on a stool, for example. But we use it for high art as well on occasion. Now, what we see here is an aniconic form. and it comes to a pointed arch. That pointed arch is purely Muslim, and it will actually move to the west from Islam, not the other way around. Inside, we see Kufic script, and it reads, "The mosque is the domicile of the pious believer." So that is interwoven in the tiles here. And these are each individual tiles, so you can imagine the difficulty of cutting these tiles to take up these calligraphic forms. That's not painted on. The exterior script that we see running around the very outside border details the 5 pillars of Islamic faith. So it's giving you the foundations of Islam, written in Kufic around the outside. Now, to us, it's purely decorative because we aren't very familiar with Arabic in the Western world. But from a Muslim tradition or Islamic tradition, they're going to be used to seeing something like this. They're going to read it, just like you can probably read cursive writing, for example, which is another calligraphic form of English. So it's the same thing, but they're using it for decorative reasons. And the architectural surface takes on almost a textile-like form. It looks a lot, well, like a rug, as if they've taken a rug and turned it into tile work, but actually the reverse is true. The tile work far predates the rugs. We'll get to those in a few minutes.